This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, everyone, good morning. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Abon. We continue in Mishna Berura, Daf Hashavua. We are up to Siman Yud. We're up to Siman Yud, Sif Gimel. Siman Yud, Sif Gimel. Kafal, Karnois, Talisai, Ukisharam, Oitifaram. If somebody doubled the corners of his garment and he tied it or he sewed it, v'doima kilu kitsan, it's like it was mekutsa ve'ein lo knafais. So in other words, he doubled it over and he tied it and he sewed it. So it's like it's folded over without corners. Afal pikein lo niftara. It is not exempt. So what does that mean it's not exempt? Why is it not exempt? How many corners does it have now? Is it talking about where it's folded over? And now, because we learned yesterday that if a talis has more than 4 corners, then it's still chayiv. So how exactly do we view these corners that have been folded over? So the Mishna Berura says as follows: Noi niftara, di'i loy mi ba'ilei haknafayim. Because if you don't need the corners, lifsok v'lishtei, cut them off and throw them away. Elavadai the sofer lahateres hatfira. Because certainly, we say certainly, he's going to untie the stitching. Therefore, hilkach nechshav ki'ilu kvar hitar atfiras chayav tzitzis. Therefore, it's considered like he already undid the stitching, and it's chayav in tzitzis. So he doubled over the corners and he sewed it, and it's like it has no corners. So in other words, in a way, it almost looks like the talis is sewed up so that it's rounded. In other words, he had a square talis, and now he sewed it up, and there mamish no corners. It's not just like yesterday. Yesterday, the guy took the talis and he cut a diagonal, or he folded over a diagonal, so you just have an extra corner. Here, he folded it up, and now it's sort of rounded on the corner, so there's no knuf at all. But nevertheless, we don't say it's considered like he undid the corner, but rather we say he's eventually going to unsew it. Says the Mishna Berura, even now, before he undid the stitching, it's considered like he already undid it. Right now, for this reason, he could put the tzitzis in the area that's folded over, even if it's less than the joint of the thumb. So we're going to see there's an important halacha by Hilchos Tzitzis that the hole has to be at least a thumb's width away from the edge. So right now, okay, so here's your tzitzis. Everyone see the tzitzis? It's 4-cornered. What did the guy do? The guy took a corner and he folded it over and he sewed it. Now, you're not only is a chayiv in tzitzis, you could even put the tzitzis there, even though right now the hole is going to be less than a thumb's width, because since you're going to undo it, it's like it's undone already. It's like it's already more than a thumb's width. If when you undo it, it's going to be above the amount of a thumb's width. This is all when you folded it and you stitched it in a circular way. So at least we learned it correctly. We're talking about when you sewed it and you fold it, and right now it's circular along the edge. But what if you folded it and you sewed it and it's square? Since now there's a corner, das halavush v'amagen Avram, derashay lato shama tzitzis bakefel. The opinion of the Levush Magen Avram is you could put the tzitzis in the fold, afal pishu yoiser mishal shetzvos misfas hakaran, even though it's more than 3 fingers from the edge of the corner. Kivan detfara, since you sewed it shari, it's permitted. So here's another halacha you need to know. The hole has to be minimal of a thumb's knuckle away from the edge, but it can't be more than 3 fingers width from the edge. Okay? So now look what the guy did. Here's your 4-cornered garment. He folded it in half, let's say, and he sewed it. Now, he wants to know, can I make a hole over here? Because when I open it, it's going to be much more than 3 fingers worth. So the Mishna Berura says, according to the Lavush and the Magen Avram, you could, because you sewed it. I mean, to me, I would have argued, you can't have your cake and eat it. Is sewing temporary or is it permanent? Why is it that when it comes to a circular fold, we say, he's going to undo it, and it's like it has a kanaf, and it's like it's already unfolded. So even though right now it's less than a thumb's knuckle away from the corner, but eventually he'll undo it and it'll be more. And why, regarding it having a corner, do we say, okay, right now it has a corner, and even though if you open up it's going to be more than 3 fingers worth, it's okay. But that's the opinion of the Magen Avram Lavush. V'rabim cholkom, as many argue on this, that stitching won't help with this. V'shani ahida sivav. Sivav is different. Because what I just said, it's not exactly the case we're discussing. Because here we're not talking about where you mamish folded it in half. We're talking about you folded an edge. So you still have a corner. So if you still have a corner, then we say that it's eventually going to be undone and it cannot be more than 3 fingers away. But sivav, where you folded it completely, derech malbush, so that you're not going to undo. But in this case, you only folded partly. Okay. Siv Daled. Talis shel beged uchnafeha shel ar chayeves. A talis that is made out of a garment. Meaning the garment part is cloth, uknafeh shalar, and the corner is leather. Chayeves, it's chayev. Because even though only al kanfei bigdeyim, only beged is chayev and tzitzis. Leather is not chayev and tzitzis. So here the corners are leather. It's chayev. The ikar is the beged. He shalar, if it's a leather garment. You know, people have that, they like to wear a leather jacket. It's really cool. Well, wait till you try leather tzitzis. Then you're going to be really cutting edge. So you want to have leather tzitzis with a cloth corner, uknafel shel beged, petura, you are pater, you're pater. Says the Mishna Berura, shel beged, techsiv, asher techasaba, that you will cover with it. A person is covered with the main part of the garment. Therefore we follow the beged, the main beged that's covered with, and not the corners. So one more time, we follow the beged and not the corners. If the beged is cloth, then it's chayv and tzitzis. Afilu mekayim ha-beged kulay agol te'ein sham kanaf. Wow, watch this. You have a circular garment, and then you add on corners that render it a cornered garment. That means without the corners, it would certainly be pater and tzitzis, because it doesn't even have kanafais. The halacha is, you attach corners of leather, chayiv, the basar ikar habeged azin. Even though the corners are what is obligating it in tzitzis, rendering it a 4-cornered garment, but in terms of defining, is this garment or is this leather, we go by the ikar garment and not by the corners. Uknafel shalar, and the corners are hide. Likewise, if let's say you have the majority of the beged cloth and the rest hide, it's also chayiv. However, mashenkin, if the corners are a garment, let's say the majority of the talis is leather, even though that the miyud of the beged, you have a shear of talis, pater mitzitzis, you are pater from tzitzis. So the same din would apply if roiv of the talis was ar, even though miyud of the beged has a shear of a talis, it's pater from tzitzis. if most of the talis was leather, even though a small amount was garment, even though afal gav shegam b'miyad abeged yesh v'shir talis. In other words, here's the case: the majority, you have a huge garment. The majority is leather, and the small amount, which is cloth, it has a share of talis. It's pater. The kivan sheikar amalbash enoy shal beged loy karina be al kanfei vigdehem. Since the majority of the garment is not cloth, we don't call it kanfei vigdehem, despite the fact that the cloth area has share talis. V'oid v'ar pater afilu midrabanan. Leather is exempt even rabbinically. The eno klal b'chlal beged. It's not considered a beged at all. B'chein adin b'talis shetachdav tafor ba'ar. Let's say you have cloth that underneath it has leather, chayeves. It's chayev because the ikar is the elyon, not the tachton. V'ma elyon shalar. If the top part is hide, patura. A lining is not the ikar. A garment is not determined by the lining, but rather the top part. Sifhei. Hayula shalosh kanafais. Let's say you had 3 corners. Va'asa behem shalosh tzitziyos. And then you put on 3 tassels. So you have it's Haman Day, and you want to wear a triangular garment, and you had a 3-cornered garment, you want to dress like a Mexican, and you have tzitzis on 3 of the corners. Then, now what you did is meaningless because it's not chayv and tzitzis. V'shavasala knafravi. Then you cut off 1 corner, you took your scissors that's always on your desk, and you cut off 1 of the corners. Now you have 4 tzitzis. V'shav asla knaf ravi. Then you made a 4th corner. V'asla gamboy tzitzis, and you put tzitzis on it. Psula mishum tasa v'loy mina asay. This is puzzle because of tasa v'loy mina asay. Says the Mishna Berura, shalosh knafais afilu metchila hayula arba knafais and tzitzis. Even if originally there were 4 corners with tzitzis. In other words, let's say originally it was a 4-cornered garment with tzitzis. And then a corner was cut and it became rounded. Even if, let's say, you fixed it afterwards. However, if at the time you put on 3 of the tassels, it was a 3-cornered garment. These 3 tzitzis become batal. Siv gimel v'tzarach lahatiram. You need to undo them v'lachzil kashim and to tie them again. Shalosh tzitziyos, 3 tzitzis. Lav davka shasa gimel tzitzis shenasa b'psul. This is not only if you made 3 of the tzitzis b'psul. Dahainu koydem shenasas basa arba, before it became a 4-cornered garment. Even if, let's say, you tied 1 tassel when it was a 3-cornered garment. Even if you only tied 1 knot with its wrappings, and then you rendered it a 4-cornered garment, that knot will be pasul. You have to undo it, and to tie it again. The Dirshu brings a diuk. This implies, what if I made a knot without any wrappings? That implies that if I made that knot before it was a 4-cornered garment, it is not puzzle. And the Mishna Berura and Siman Yudalef Sivkat and Samach Dalid says that there are machmirim, and l'chadchila you should be concerned, but me'ikar hadin, it's only kesher im chulyosav. Fine. Let's do one more Mishnah Berura mishum ta'aseh. The pasuk says, "Gedilim ta'aseh lecha al arba kanfos, mashma sheyu haknafos asuyos arba koydem shnasa tzitzis." Gedilim ta'aseh lecha al arba implies the tassels must be on a 4-cornered garment before you put the tassels on. Loi shenasu hatzitzis koydem haknafos. Not that you should make the tzitzis before the corners. V'havalei taseh v'loy mina asoy. Doing so would be a violation of it was made before you actually actively make it. Al kain sarch lahatirim, you have to undo it, v'lachzor l'kashim, and tie it again. V'davka hashalish tzitzis harishonim shasiyasam hay b'psul. You only have to undo the first 3 that were done b'psul, but the 4th one that you put on a 4-corner garments, we don't say, well, that one you also have to undo because the first 3 were pasul. No, the 4th one you put on a 4-corner garment. You don't have to undo that because that was done properly. And the disqualification of the first 3 tassels does not disqualify it. Okay, Rabbi say we'll hold it over here. Sorry I was late this morning. Kol tov everyone. Bracha v'atzlacha.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.